Hi, and welcome to the next in the series of leadership takeaways. And here with me today is Andrew Wall of Wall CPA. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, how are you doing, Rachel?
I'm great. And Andrew, as many of my leadership takeaways, I'm fortuitous to have international keynote speakers and experts from around the world. And Andrew is from Canada, Toronto.
Yep, Toronto, Ontario, born and raised.
Wonderful. And so, yeah, thank you again for spending the time and, sharing your knowledge with us here today of kind of what's struck you in the industry of being a leader in cloud accounting and many of the other areas that we've just discussed before this interview. So to get right into it, Andrew, you were, well, the first topic we start on is strategy. So you were saying that you've been about 3 years set up with Wall CPA, and before you were in your father's accounting firm, which has been going, did you say over 30 years in your father's accounting firm?
Yeah, I think we're 34 years this year.
Which is amazing. So obviously there's a lot of things that your dad's doing in the industry that works, but you could see a niche for cloud accounting. And so that was a really brave move 3 years ago to go, no, there's definitely a niche here that I'm going to focus on, start my own business. So what was the strategy and thinking behind your whole vision, like when you started all of that?
Well, I think the strategy and the vision was around work-life balance, which I still struggle for. Love the benefits that technology was bringing to the accounting world to unchain us from our desk. With traditional forms of accounting, people would bring in paper, you would meet with people face to face, all your staff were in one location. So you really were chained to your location, which didn't give you the freedom and the flexibility to be with your family. And I have a young family. I've got a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. So as 3 years back, I had a brand new baby. So having the freedom to be flexible around my schedule, which didn't mean I necessarily worked any less, and oftentimes it meant I worked more, but I worked around my schedule. So I could be there when my kids came home from school and spend that valuable time with them. But once they were in bed, I could be online working with clients, which ended up being even better for clients because that works with their schedule too, because most people share the same problems I do, that they want to spend time with their family. And yes, they have work to do, particularly when it comes to filing their taxes, and they have an obligation with the government that they have to do. They don't really want to be dealing with that at prime family time. So that was a big part of my vision, as well as this whole concept of value billing, which was a new concept in the accounting world at the time, or at least new to a lot of us. And what that concept was basically that we had a set fee, and we weren't charging by the hour or the time that we spent with the clients, which is a real mind bend for a lot of accountants, because they're used to billing by the hour and measuring their staff by the number of hours and the number of billable hours that they have. And to me, that didn't really make a lot of sense, because the staff only have a certain number of hours in the day that they can do. So it's not really, to me, about the number of billable hours that's going to measure the success of my business. It was more about, well, what's customer satisfaction? How many clients are they dealing with? What's the total revenue? So my concept was very different from traditional accountants, which was, let's measure by billable hours, and let's look at our top line as our main measure of performance. And mine was, well, let's look at customer satisfaction. So I basically had 3 measures that I was looking at, which was average turnaround time. So how quickly a file took from when it came in the house to when it left and was finished to the clients, which is an important thing, not only to the clients, because they don't want to be sitting on their files and waiting for their work to be completed, but also that's a measure for productivity and efficiency within our own office. And then, of course, customer satisfaction. So we do a Net Promoter Score with every one of our clients, and that becomes a measure of our performance rather than how many billable hours are clients spending. Because I can tell you from the 34 years that my dad has been in business, that billing and invoicing is a constant struggle for accountants, and they deal with write-offs and unhappy clients because there's a mismatch between what their perception of what the fees were going to be and what they end up being. Whereas when you have a fixed fee billing structure, there's an agreement upfront to the scope of work and what the cost will be. and that's laid out, and everyone agrees to it. So there's no, there's hidden expectations or hidden pitfalls for either the client or the business. And those were things that I was really passionate about, as was leveraging things like social media and being online, which again, with most traditional businesses, they look at, they all want to know, what's the ROI? What's the ROI I'm getting on the time that I'm spending putting up videos, the time that I'm spending sharing content? And to me, I looked at it as a much bigger picture, as what's the value that I'm delivering? Because if I'm continuing to deliver value, that will come back to me. And so I've seen from lots of other industry leaders that really does work, and that if you can be, the 51% value in a relationship, that people will remember you, respect you, refer you, and that's going to help drive your business. So that was a lot of my motivation to go where I wanted to go.
And I think that's what struck me when because again, we engaged on Twitter, which is a lot of the way I find my leadership takeaway entrepreneurs and CEOs. And that struck me about your profile, is that you very much had a kind of an established personality on Twitter, and that's quite unusual for an accountant, even though a cloud-based accountant. And I like, from what I could read and some of the links that you had on there, that you were, like you said, you were all about value and really connecting that to client needs and kind of really reading the market, which is great, because I'm so into like looking at social media value, and just like you say, constantly putting out content that people can benefit from, because I do believe you build up so many points in the general universe by putting that value out, and it will come back in the form of referrals, word of mouth. So I think you're really spot on there, Andrew.
Yeah, and I think so far it's worked well for me. And like you said, just the nature of the fact that this interview has come about is sheerly because of what we've been doing on social media. And you never know when a client is going to need to start a business or need help with their taxes. So it's virtually impossible to get the timing dead on, which is why I believe strongly that it's about constantly adding value. And not even necessarily to the people who will be your end client, because even if you're adding value to someone that will never be your client, if they remember you and they appreciate you and they like you, when they have a friend or a colleague who's in a situation, they'll be like, you know what? I saw this guy online. He was on Twitter. He was posting this great content. You should at least have a look at his profile when you're benchmarking your accountants to look at. And it certainly worked. We get a lot of traffic coming through. We've got a fairly large Twitter following, where we're getting literally hundreds of thousands of impressions a month, far more than we're actually getting on the website. And we're maybe not great at driving people back to the website. And I do get criticism from some social media people that I should be, promoting more. But it's worked, and I haven't felt the need to, because if people like me and engage to me, they know how to follow my profile. They know how to click through to my website. And it's been great for the relationships that I built with small business owners, other accountants, people in my industry who come to me with new products and new technology that I might not have otherwise found out about. I've had some great opportunities to look in and deep dive on some technology pre-release that I wouldn't get the opportunity to know about, simply because of my exposure and what I'm doing online. And that adds tremendous, immeasurable value to my business, because I know about some of the technology before any other accountants in the industry.
Yeah, it's definitely relationship, and they talk about emotional intelligence as well. And I think if you're closer to the market and you're understanding what people's pain points are, which I think is what you said in one of your interviews that I was following on YouTube, on some of the interviews you've done, is you understanding and you're identifying that with your client of potentially what some of their problems are that they're going through. They're more likely to come back to you because you're talking their language rather than just talking the language of accounting, which no one wants to know what you do, what your skills are, what your benefits are, what you're certified and qualified as. They don't give a monkeys. They want you to talk the language of the issues that they're going through, and that's it.
Absolutely. That's what I believe, because There's so many accountants out there that are posting, tax information, deep, knowledgeable, great, valuable information to other accountants. But small business owners don't hire an accountant to learn about tax. They hire an accountant to take care of that so that they don't have to worry about it. They're looking for their accountant to add value to their business and helping them understand things like strategy, a lot of the business coaching types of tips that you have. How are we going to help your business succeed? You take care of the taxes because that's what I've hired you for. But the value that you're going to add to me that's going to make me want to come back and see you is about how do I drive my business? How do I grow my business? Not how do I, what's the latest tax update from CRA, or what's the information on the latest budget? That's just expected knowledge that they expect me and my team to have. And we have it, but that's not what's going to keep them coming back to my profile on social.
Yeah, and I love the story you and I just shared before the interview recording, and you were able to share the content of, obviously you can't name people and stuff, but can you share the content of the guy with the, quite a big healthy business who bought this box of receipts?
Yeah.
And that's so amazing that, again, you could go on about, well, if you use QuickBooks and you do this and you do, they want to know what's the end value and how you've transformed his business from what you said on Friday of him dumping this box. Do you want to say a bit more about what you potentially transformed for him?
Yeah. So it was a really interesting story. We had a guy who runs a multi-million-dollar business bring in a crate of information on Friday with unopened envelopes, all his tax information from multitude of years. And like you said, it wasn't necessarily about the tools that we were going to use to make him more effective. It was about what the results were, which is basically that he was going to have better financial information. Now he had a tool where in this specific situation, he had clients who were authorized to pay him by credit card up to $10,000. But because he wasn't taking credit card payments with his invoicing, he actually had to issue an invoice, which he was doing through Excel, and then he would have to wait 30 to 60 days to get paid for that. And so that made a big impact on his cash flow, and it was impacting decisions about whether he could actually afford to hire a new staff. And he just didn't have the financial information. So that's what we were able to do for him, is transform him from this literal shoebox to a process that was completely digital, that was real-time information, that he was able to have the insights into his business and be able to make better financial decisions, plus increase the cash flow and drive more revenue to his business. And this wasn't, like I said, it was a multi-million-dollar business with large clients that, if I were to name them, everyone in here would know who those clients were. I'm, for the sake of that client, not going to name them. But it was a perfect example of the value that an accountant can give, because this guy was a great businessman, but he didn't know how to deal with his taxes. And in fact, it became overwhelming to him. And he was taking his documents, not even opening them, throwing them in the box. And it was this big burden, this weight on his shoulders that was sitting there, and he didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't a month late. It wasn't a couple months late. We were talking years late because it had become overwhelming to him and he didn't know how to deal with it. And we were able to set him up with a process where he was getting all of his information that the suppliers were sending by email was automatically flowing through. He had an app for his phone. He had a scanner. It was a process that he could handle, that made sense to him, that wasn't overwhelming. And he just knew, okay, when I get a document, this is what I do with it. And then I'm done, and then I have peace of mind. And if I need to know anything about my information, I can get it online. If I need to bill a client, I can do it from my phone. I can do it from my computer. And that bill is going to have a nice little Pay Now button, which made a huge impact to his cash flow and the bottom line of his business.
Yeah, and that's where you're a businessman and you're an accountant, because you understand the back end accounting, but you understand the business application. And so just to mention that, so that guy with the credit card allowance of £10,000 with some of the agencies he was working with, now what you'd shown him was a QuickBook form that he could click to be able to send it to the whole credit card system, so that he was able to take money out immediately, rather than having to wait, like you were saying, for sort of 30, 60 days, which is huge for him, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. There's some incredible statistics that I can't quite recall right now, but the transformation from putting that little Pay Now button at the bottom of an invoice and how quickly you get paid is incredible. I mean, we're not talking, 10x, we're talking 100x improvement in receivables. So you're more likely to get paid, period, and you're going to get paid substantially faster by offering that button. And in this particular client, normally there are issues with the fact that there's a cost associated with credit card processing. With this client, what he said, okay, I'm in high demand. I've got great value with my clients. I'm going to mark up my invoice 3% regardless. And anyone who chooses to pay by check, that's a 3% premium for me. And he had no problems with that. Was able to increase his bottom line and get paid faster for 80% of his business.
Yeah, which is huge. And then also you were saying about just, I think it's quite well known, being able to take a picture of receipts so that you don't get these guys and girls coming in with piles and piles of years of receipts, which is, again, wonderful that technology. So. Yeah,
we're in a great time with what technology is doing, and it's constantly evolving. And like I said, I'm lucky to have this insight into what some of the technology that's coming down the road, and it's incredible. The ability to have a smartphone now with you anywhere you go and be able to take pictures of your documents, that's the best form of document management in the world. A lot of people don't realize that receipts do fade over time. Even if you're not using any of these fancy technologies like HubDoc, Receipt Bank, QuickBooks Online, even if you're just taking a picture of your phone and storing it on your phone, you've now done a better job because you've got a permanent record. And I can't tell you how many audits I've lost because clients either don't have the receipt or the receipt is illegible by the time we go and do the audit because they think, oh, I've kept my receipts, I've put them in a box. But the problem is you're not likely to be assessed for several years down the road. And by the time you go back to get that image, it literally could be illegible through no fault of your own, just by the fact that over time that ink has worn off.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I save all my receipts. I put them into my Excel spreadsheet, and then a year, 9 months time, present them to my accountant, and I save the receipts. So thanks.
Yeah, take a picture with your phone. It's the best tool in a small business owner's quiver, so to speak. So definitely make sure that you're doing that. Even if you're not using any of the other technologies to automate the actual bookkeeping process, even if all you're doing is taking a picture and knowing that is your support for any transactions if you ever happen to go through an audit. Yeah,
wow, okay. So moving on to strengths and weaknesses, what would you say has been sort of the biggest strength? I can already kind of see what your biggest strength is that's armed you to make this transition to the cloud accounting. What was your biggest strength?
I guess my biggest strength is that I'm an accountant who's willing to take risks. And that's pretty rare in my industry. Most people are very conservative. We're trained to be conservative. We're conservative by nature. So we avoid all risks. And I'm not afraid to fail. And I think that's one of the things that makes me different, because I sort of look at it, if I'm not failing, I'm not learning and I'm not growing. I get my greatest strength from the things that I've done wrong, as long as I'm able to pivot and adapt and learn from my mistakes. If I don't learn from my mistakes, obviously that doesn't help anybody. But willing to take on new technology and play around with it is, I think, what's given me the greatest success that I have.
And where did you? Because that's kind of one of the key. When I study lots of business successful billionaires out there, that's kind of the key that they're always saying is, learn to take kind of the calculated risks, and also failing is winning. You're learning. Where did you learn that? Was that just natural, or did you read up or study, or?
I think a lot of that came from my dad, truthfully. My dad is not a typical accountant. And he's always been willing to take risks. I think he always taught me from when I was a young kid that, if 3 out of 10 ideas succeed, you've got a great batting average. You're doing better than everybody else. So be willing to try new things, because if you don't try them, you'll never succeed. The famous quote, I guess, from Wayne Gretzky is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So if you're not willing to break out of your comfort zone and try something new, you'll never expand beyond where you are. So it's constantly trying to evolve and get better. A lot of that really came from my dad, and his vision. And I also grew up with, I had a very unique form of punishment when I misbehaved as a child. So my form of punishment when I was a child was that I had to listen to motivational tapes like Tony Robbins and Zig Ziglar, which is funny now because now I pay to go and listen to that type of advice. But as a child, I really wasn't that interested. And that was my dad's form of punishment, which is, I guess, obviously been a big influence on who I am today.
That's amazing. I love your dad. My God, high five, Dad.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character. Like I said, hopefully you'll be seeing some more of him in some of the content that we're going to be putting out over the course of the summer. And he's 76 now, and he is definitely not your typical accountant. Still going strong, and he is transitioning the reins, but still very much involved. And in fact, one of the things that we're doing now is, as he's transitioning a little bit more out of the business, he's transitioning more into more thought leadership stuff. Some of the stuff that a few years ago he didn't really think, he didn't buy into the same value of that, but helping and mentoring within startup organizations and adding value to mentors in ways that are not really truly measurable to the bottom line, but are immeasurable when it comes to growth.
Right. Amazing. And what would you say is one weakness that might have perhaps held you back in the past?
That I'm willing to take risks. Not everyone likes an accountant that's willing to take risk, and we definitely the way we try to model things is we offer clients what we call full option accounting. So even though I might be willing to take a risk, the client may not have that same comfort level. So we'll stick to what the client's comfort level is. But when you take risks and you do fail, which does happen, you leave a wake of really happy clients with exposure, but also clients that aren't happy with, sometimes things didn't turn out. Like we had a new process that we implemented this year with Right Signature, which is a way for people to sign with their phone, which was a new process that we took on this year. And we definitely failed forward in how we did that. And we learned from our mistakes and how we communicated to the clients, but it wasn't a perfect transition. So, we went back to our clients and explained, like, sorry, we were trying to do this for your best interest. I understand that you may not want your information on a system that is owned by a US company, because that's a big problem that we have here in Canada, is a lot of the technology is on US or Amazon servers. And with that comes the Patriot Act, which can potentially, the government can pull all that information. And we have some clients who are in the IT industry who are very, very, very risk adverse when it comes to their financial information. And when we thought we were adding this great new tool, from their perspective, putting their financial information up on a US hosted website was not a risk that they were comfortable with. And we had to quickly roll back from that and make sure that we went forward with, asking for permission as opposed to begging for forgiveness, which sometimes I'm guilty of in trying to be take on risks and fail fast. Like I'm quick to jump onto new technology, and sometimes I need to go back. And this is what it comes back to, like I said, about some of those staff members who keep me grounded, and they're the traditional people who I have to win over and show them that we're moving in the right path. And that's, I'd say, one of my big weaknesses is that I want to constantly change. I want to constantly evolve, and I want to do it quickly. And sometimes I move too quickly.
Yeah. I can understand that. I like to change and evolve quickly, and sometimes get very impatient if I don't start to see the results. And like you say, dragging and pulling people who are maybe a bit more, they're less change or they're more change adverse.
Yeah.
And trying to want to control people, like, come on, why do you not want to do this?
And like I said, as we were saying, which I guess didn't get into the interview, is I look at that as a challenge to me as a leader on how to do a better job, because these people are forcing me to convince them and demonstrate the value of this, and they're forcing me to dot my I's and cross my T's and develop process. And there's tremendous value to these people who are more traditional, and I might want to pull the rug out from them on some of their approaches. I've got to step back and go, okay, what's the value that they're adding to me, and how are they making me better? Because definitively having employees who've been with us over 20 years, even when they're traditional, is tremendous value to my organization.
That was the big learning I learned when I was dealing with some people in my life. Like you say, when I learned coaching, firstly, it's like, what if you have someone who you have no control over, and it's a case of, what is the lesson for me to learn here, that I can't just dominate or push someone into a scenario, even if I think it's the best scenario for them. There's something there for me to learn in getting that buy-in and that process of learning to speak to people and speak to their needs. So yeah, I think that's a good learning. So moving on to the third section, which is resources. What resources do you think have armed you again in this kind of 3-year process of changing over to the cloud technology, convincing your father's firm that it's a good move? What resources have been most useful? And again, when I talk to other leaders about this, it could be people resources, it could be technology resources, it could be insight books, mentors, coaches. Who are your go-tos for resources that support you?
I would say it's all of that. First would be sort of the mentors in my life who have helped me out. I've been very fortunate to have some very successful people who've been willing to take me under their wing and provide coaching and guidance. And so one of the things that I've set up with my new business, particularly as I'm transitioning and taking over my father's practice, is an informal board of advisors, a formal board of advisors. But one of the things that I loved about my training in my professional designation was this concept of large organizations and their board of directors and the value that they can have. And I think a lot of small business owners don't take advantage of that. And creating an informal or formal board of advisors who can help you and coach you, and ideally people from different walks of life. And because the greatest value that I've had in my business has often come from people who are outside of my niche, who don't have that sort of narrow mindset, and can look at my business from a business standpoint rather than an accounting standpoint. And they've added tremendous value and helped and coached me along the way. I've also been very fortunate in being able to get involved with some great technology. Like I said, Intuit has been an unbelievable organization to work with. Not only is there technology helping transform the way I drive my business, but the leadership in their organization and the support that they've provided to me has been valuable. And not to mention the learning that I've gotten from their organization. Again, another large multi-billion-dollar business who's very successful at what they do. And I've been able to see into their business and pull aspects of what they do into my business on a obviously much smaller scale, and take pearls of wisdom that they have and apply that to my business.
Yeah, so those are the main resources for you. Anything else in the resources that you think you couldn't have done all of this without?
Audible. Audible is my tool of choice for listening to books. I believe strongly in constant and never-ending improvement. So continuing to learn and to grow, and a lot of that comes through books. Of course, for me, it's difficult to have the time when I've got a young family and I've got a growing business to sit down and actually just read. But on my daily commute back and forth to work, it's amazing how much I can usually get a book a week done just in my daily commute, let alone if I happen to have any other time. And that's again, a tremendous value. And then Facebook, actually. Facebook is been something that's been a huge value to me, that I came late to the game, like most accountants, to Facebook. And the value that I've been getting from the relationships that I've had in my networks and my groups there has been immeasurable. And I guess all of social media is added huge value to me in ways that I never really anticipated. But I think the value that I get out of social media is the move from an online relationship to an in-person relationship, which this is our first step towards that. And I'm sure next time you're in Canada or I'm overseas, we'll have a drink and get to know each other, because it's these relationships that you build that you can now build around the world is incredible. And it literally is amazing, because I have people that I learned from who were in Australia and the UK, and which is amazing for me because Canada is lagging the UK and Australia when it comes to some of our cloud accounting technology. So I'm really I get it years ahead of my competition locally because of my exposure to people around the world. So I mean, that's a huge asset. Again, this is part of my network and the people who are adding value, but what enables that is technology, which obviously, even 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to have this same conversation, at least not unless we were a large multinational organization with, telepresence systems. Now anyone can get on a Skype call or a Google Hangout or a GoToMeeting or a Zoom and connect with people around the world and get value. And this is, we're living in exceptional times.
Yeah. You literally just, that last 5 minutes created all my thoughts, because Audible for me is my go-to tool. And I was writing something the other day and I was thinking the main key leadership takeaway for me is to immerse yourself daily into whatever routine. I have a morning routine. And I know that whenever I have a negative thought or a negative situation that happens to me that's outside of my control, my immediate thing is to pull myself, deal with myself rather than get dragged down by it, and immediately plug something into my ears, of whether it be a YouTube conference or Audible or whatever. And I just quickly re-immerse myself, reconnect myself back to that mindset, back to the potential of all the different authors out there who are living, breathing, taking actions. And so everything there you've said is exactly what I would agree with. And the fact that, like you say, with social media, how we are connected. I've talked on other leadership interviews of, I cannot get over the fact that I am here talking on a screen to somebody in Canada and New Zealand and in America, and all the other interviews I've had. It's such a joy, and I can learn so much, and we can expand what's possible in this world by doing these types of things, because this type of setup would have taken years before, because you would have to grow a relationship, then pay for the visit, and then it's done in an instant. And we are, like you say, we're going to start to see huge growth from this type of technology. So
absolutely.
And the final thing that we usually cover on leadership takeaways is just kind of insights, which I think we've covered on how a person gets their daily insights, but future focus for you. So where would you say, is it now literally looking for the transfer of your father's business to your business and more cloud accounting? And what would you say is your biggest challenge with that as your future focus?
So my biggest challenge is, like I say, bringing along the team and convincing them of the value of all the changes, because I do have within my practice very traditional accountants who don't necessarily see the same vision as me when it comes to technology and all the changes that I want to make. So my biggest challenge is bringing them along with that journey and convincing them of the value. So my next few years are definitely focused on the transition of bringing my dad's practice into mine and bringing it into sort of a more modern style, which means doing more workflow automation, dealing with more cloud-based tools and getting more of our clients onto that platform, moving established clients who are used to a time and materials-based billing into a fixed fee place billing, which is probably one of the most prominent issues we're dealing with right now, because to me it's the most important issue of transitioning the established practice and moving these people who are used to hourly based billing into more of a fixed fee based billing, which I believe is truly better for them and for us, because the amount of time that's wasted on dealing with invoicing issues, and getting away from timesheets as the measure of success is the short-term goals. The long-term goals is growing our organization beyond our current boundaries. So we're right now dealing with all provinces in Canada except Quebec. We're working right now with a gentleman in Quebec, because Quebec is almost like a different country when it comes to their tax systems. It is very, very different. It's literally easier for me to do a U.S. return, which we do U.S. returns right now, than it is for me to do a Quebec return. But I know it's kind of mind-boggling. It's not to mention the language is one thing, but then it literally is a completely different system, because their common law system was different than the British common law system, so it made things very, very different in how they're handled. So establishing a full national presence is step one, and step two is actually growing beyond our borders here in Canada to other countries like Australia and the UK. And again, I'm a little, I think very differently than everyone. Everyone else is telling me to go to the US first. I'm actually a little bit more interested in expanding into Australia and the UK first, because they are more forward thinking. They're further along on this spectrum of where I want to be, and I can learn and grow more in those organizations than what I can do in the States. So they're the areas of opportunity that excite me more than going to the US. Of course, the US, being as big a market as it is definitely still on my radar. But the goal is Canada, Australia, UK, US.
Amazing.
So take over the world. Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant, Andrew, and it's been so great to talk to you again. Sort of, as I say, a great mind that I met on Twitter and share some common values, and it's lovely to see you expanding and growing and using kind of the some more innovative tools to grow your business. So I really do wish you the best of luck, which it doesn't seem that you need, but you're working very hard.
A little bit of luck.
little bit. I know. I was just thinking in my head there are some quotes of that. I'd rather be lucky than hardworking or whatever. But yeah, I think it's a combination of the two, and then you're doing really well.
I absolutely believe in luck, and sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time. And I think it's the combination of luck and hard work. You can't rely solely on luck. And you can't rely solely on hard work. You just sometimes have to be in the right place at the right time to get those great opportunities. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, and hopefully you broadcast it to some of your hundreds of thousands of followers on social media to just give them a snippet of who you are as a person and as a business person. Absolutely. So you'll shoot me a link and I'll share it out in my social channels. Will indeed. I will indeed. Absolutely. So thank you, Andrew, and I will talk to you soon on social media. Sounds good. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks. Bye.